Hey guys, it's Blue Eyes Master 91, and today I thought I would do a Vanquish Soul profile. I used this deck last weekend at my locals. I went 2-3, but all but my first match of the day went to at least game 3. Well, did go to game 3. A lot of the matches were fairly close as I'm still kind of learning the deck, but it was a lot of fun to play, and it did better than I expected for a first time playing in a tournament setting. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so first things first, some of the things you need to know about this deck is that it is a fairly small engine. I think that's about 20 cards in the main deck. And out of the monsters, there's only a handful. Next, all of them have effects based on attributes in your hand. So the rest of the deck is built around the attributes needed for effects to go off. Well, mostly for that. And finally, I know it's been a little spacey with me updating. Hopefully that will change here soon. Once I have a more concrete schedule, I can try to figure out one day a week to try to get a profile up. But we'll see. Yeah, that's it on all of that. As for me going to the regionals last month, I did fairly well. I went I went 3-4 before I dropped, and that was mostly because the group I went with, all of them were not doing as well. We all had too many losses to manage to get an invite to Worlds, but we were using it mostly as a stepping stone to figure out where we needed to improve. So I was perfectly fine with dropping out early. No, wait, we dropped out round 6, so I went 2-3. My mistake. I've been very, very exhausted lately, so my memory's a little fuzzy. Anyway, getting into the deck profile. First things first, we have the king of the main deck, Vanquish Soul Caesar Valius. He is a 3k attacker with 1500 defense, and he's an Earth attribute level 8 monster. He's also a dragon monster. And the effect is as followed. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one non-dragon Vanquish Soul monster you control, return it to the hand, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. Quick effect, you can activate one of these effects by revealing monsters in your hand with the listed attributes. Moving forward, I'm not going to necessarily read that part of their effects out loud. I'll just go to which attributes you need. But for Caesar Valius' first attribute-related effect, if you reveal an Earth monster, this card is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects this turn. If you reveal an Earth, Fire, and Dark, you get to destroy one card on the field. One other card on the field. So it doesn't matter which side of the field it's on, you get to destroy a card. You can only use each effect of Caesar Valius once per turn. It cannot activate more than one in the same chain, so it is limited in that sense, but the effects are really, really good, so it makes sense that they would want to try to limit how often you can use them. Next, we have 3 copies of the second strongest monster in the main deck. That is a Vanquish Soul creature. Heavy Borderer. He is a machine dark monster with 2500 attack, 15 defense. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one non-machine Vanquish Soul monster you control, return it to the hand, and if you do, special summon this card. For the secondary effects that involve the attributes in your hand, if you reveal a dark monster in hand, you get to draw one card. If you reveal an earth and fire, you can inflict 1,500 points of damage to your opponent. So that's a really, really cool effect. I actually won 2 games just using that burning effect because I couldn't swing over my opponent's monster at the time. So I just sat and burned them for 15 on my turn, 15 on their turn. That's 3,000. My next turn was, 45, and then it was 6,000. So, I mean, it was very, very quick. Every turn burning for 1,500 points. It's extremely potent. And like Caesar Valius, you can only use one effect per chain and only once per turn. Next, we have the first Searcher of the deck. Now, Dr. Madlub is a level 4 Dark Attribute Fiend monster. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Vanquish Soul spell or trap from your deck to your hand. You can activate one of these effects by revealing monsters in your hand with the listed attributes. If you reveal a dark, one face-up monster your opponent controls loses 500 attack and defense. If you reveal a dark and earth, return the monster with the lowest defense on the field to the hand. If it's tied, you get to choose. You can only use each effect once per turn and only use one per the same chain. So that is our first Searcher of the deck. There is one more. And with Dr. Madlub, I need to stress something. For your searching, you have 2 options. Well, 3 options. You have your Vanquish Soul continued spells, the Vanquish Soul Dust Devil spells, or the trap card Vanquish Soul Trinity Burst. These are the only targets in the deck. I want to really hammer this fact home. You cannot search this spell card. Stake Your Soul is not a Vanquish Soul spell by name. It needs to have that in its name. And because of how powerful this spell is, it makes sense that you would not be able to search it. I actually had to look up a ruling to make sure I was correct during the tournament because I was asked at one point why I didn't search out that spell. And that would be why. And my air conditioning just kicked on. Okay. Moving right along, our second Searcher of the deck is Vanquish Soul Raisin. He is a level 4 Fire Attribute Warrior monster with 1,800 attack and 1,500 defense. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one non-warrior Vanquish Soul monster from your deck to your hand. For the quick effects in the hand, if you reveal a fire monster in your hand, or a fire attribute monster, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects this turn. Fire and Dark. Destroy all other monsters in this card's column. Once again, you can only use one per chain. I really, really like both of those attribute effects. I never really got to utilize them much, but I think that they were very, very potent and very, very powerful. Next, we have our 2 one-ofs in the deck for the Vanquish engine. And that would be our level 4 Earth Attribute Beast Warrior Vanquish Soul Pantera. Pantera has 1,700 attack and 1,900 defense. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can special summon this card from your hand for the attribute related effects. This card cannot be destroyed by battle this turn if you reveal an earth. If you reveal Earth and Fire, destroy all spell and trap cards in this card's column. I really love that you can special summon her out. It makes link plays and other plays a lot easier. The attribute related effects, I only ever really used the cannot be destroyed by battle effect once this past weekend. So, yeah. Finally, our last Vanquish Soul monster, the level 7, 6, 2, 4, yeah, level 6 Vanquish Soul Pluton HG. It is a fire zombie monster. And its effects are as followed. During your opponent's turn, if you control no monsters or only vanquished soul monsters in your main monster zone, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. The attribute related quick effects now. If you reveal a fire monster in your hand, this card gains 3,000 defense until the end of the turn. If you reveal a dark and earth monster, this card gains 3,000 attack until the end of the turn. So once again, I really love this deck. It is probably the most fun I've had using a deck in recent years. And yeah. So moving on to the rest of the deck now. So for the rest of the deck, we have 3 copies of Ash, because it's a fire attribute monster. 1 Therian King, because it's an Omni Negate and all that nonsense. It's a really, really good card. And it's also an Earth attribute, which helps. We have 2 copies of Kashtira Fenrir. I was playing 3, but I found that I bricked a lot more using 3. So I dropped it down to 2. Next we have our copy of Nibiru. It's the only attribute in the deck that does not pertain to any of the effects of the Vanquished Soul monsters as of now. Then we have 1 copy of Kurakara Divine Carnate. I believe I said that right, which is a fire attribute fairy monster that kind of goes in line with Nibiru. It has a very, very interesting effect. This card cannot be normal summoner set, must be special summoned from your hand by attributing all face-up monsters on the field that activated their effects this turn in your opponent's main monster zones. She gains 1,500 attack for each monster attributed. Just special summon this card during the end phase. During your end phase, you can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field. So she's very, very similar to how Nibiru works. You basically board wipe, but it's only your opponent's monsters, which is kind of nice. Then we have our copy of Pankratops. It's an Earth attribute, so there's that. We have our copy of the Mad Flame Kaiju, who Dr. Madlove can bounce back to hand because it has less defense. And of course, you can make its defense even lower. Actually, I think that 1,200 points is the weakest defensive monster in the deck, aside from Pluton. Yeah, that would be the weakest defensively other than Nibiru. So, it's a really, really good card to have, especially with that combo. You can bounce this back to your hand, so you can just Kaiju again next turn. And then finally, we have the Sticky Kaiju. Because it is an Earth monster, and having 2 Kaiju is kind of a requirement. If you're using 1 Kaiju, you may as well have another. Just so that way you can special summon 1 to your side of the field as well. But that's it on monsters. Let's dive into the spells. Alright, so for spells, once again, I want to say this. with Dr. Madlub's normal slash special summoning effect, you cannot search outstake your soul. Last time I'm repeating it. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but it is important to know. Because if you do add it to your hand, it is an illegal play. And you do not want to make an illegal play. Moving right along. We do run 3 copies of Stake Your Soul. Stake Your Soul's effect is as followed. Reveal 1 monster in your hand. Special summon 1 Vanquish Soul monster with the same attribute, but a different name from your deck. But return it to the hand during the end phase. You can only activate 1 Stake Your Soul per turn. So, what this does, and why it's so important to know you cannot search it. You can reveal any monster in your hand. Any of them. From Therian King to Caesar. None of them are unable to be used. Say you reveal Pink or the Mag Kaiju. You can add, or you can special summon out Caesar Valius or Raisin. Raisin's effect would then trigger, so you can add a Vanquish Soul to your hand, thus furthering your combo plays. Because of that, this is a must-have as a 3-of in the deck. Okay, now that I've hammered that you cannot search at home and why it's so important, let's move on. We are playing 2 copies of the quick play spell card, Vanquish Soul Dust Devil. This spell saved me in one of my games. Target 1 Vanquish Soul monster you control, change its battle position, then you can change face-up monsters your opponent control to face-down defense position up to the number of Vanquish Soul monsters you control with different names. You can only activate this card once per turn. That forcing them face-down effect is insanely useful, because if you can't get over a monster's attack points, odds are you can get over the defensive points. So it's very, very useful. Next we have 2 copies of Vanquish Soul Continued. It's another quick play spell. You pay 500 life points, then target 1 Vanquish Soul monster in your graveyard. You either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense. You can only activate 1 Vanquish Soul Continued per turn. So, the best combination I had at one point in a match was I had both these set. One of my monsters was destroyed in battle. As I dropped the card, I flipped this during, as soon as it was destroyed, I brought it back. It came back in defense. Then I flipped this. I was able to put my monster back in attack mode, and then force all my opponent's monsters into defense, which saved my life and ended up giving me the win. Next, we have 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. This is simply because it helps you get to your engine, it de-bricks you, and because you only really need 3 cards in your extra deck, which would be the 3 Link 1 for the Vanquish Soul engine, everything else can be used for Pot of Prosperity. And then finally, we have 1 copy of Feather Duster because it is extremely, extremely useful in the format and just in general. It gets rid of your opponent's back row. So they have a skill drain active, and it gets rid of it. It's extremely useful. That's it on these spells. Let's dive into the traps. So, the only Vanquish Soul trap we have is Trinity Burst. Target 1 Vanquish Soul monster you control. Special summon up to 2 Vanquish Soul monsters from your hand with different names from each other. Neither of which has the same original attribute as the targeted monster, but negate their effects and return them to the hand during the end phase. Then you can return to the hand all cards your opponent controls in the same columns as the targeted monster you control in the special summon monsters by this effect. So this is one of the best trap cards for this deck, and it's insanely powerful because this can effectively get rid of 3 monsters and 3 cards in the back row if they're there. It's extremely useful, and because you get to use it even during your opponent's turn, you can really abuse this trap a little bit because it does save your. It does make it so you can win games. Finally, we have 3 copies of Imperm and 2 copies of There Can Only Be One, which won me a game as well, which was extremely nice to see because I am not a big fan of trap cards that restrict play, but with this deck it just makes sense because you're using so many different types of monsters. So moving right along, we're going to dive into the extra deck, and again, you only need 3 cards in this extra deck. The rest are prosperity fodder, basically. So the only monster in the extra deck that matters are the 3 copies of Rock of the Vanquisher. You need 1 Vanquish Soul monster to summon it. This card cannot be used as link material, and while you have a Vanquish Soul monster, your opponent can only target monsters you control with the highest attack. Their choice if you have a monster that's tied. During the main phase, you have quick effects. They're not attribute locked or anything. It's just a quick effect, and you can use one of these effects. Special summon a Vanquish Soul monster from your hand. Add 1 Vanquish Soul monster from the graveyard to your hand. You can only use this effect of Vanquish Soul Rock of the Vanquisher once per turn. So that is why this monster is so useful. You have him on the field along with your Caesar Valius. You can win games because they can't attack any of your weaker monsters. That said, you never want to rely on just one monster. So other cards I would consider keeping instead of using for prosperity would be Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, either Tornado Dragon, one of your 2 copies of Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, or your Babushka, the Terribly Tired Tapir, yeah. And that's only because we do run a copy of Zeus. Doesn't matter which one you keep. It, I guess, depends on the game state at the time. But I would definitely keep at least 1 Flare Metal because he is so good. He burns your opponent for 500 damage every time they want to do something. They take 500 points. He's the original tax dragon. Each time your opponent activates a card or effect, inflict 500 points immediately after the resolve. Yeah. So it's extremely important to keep at least 1 of these. The rest of the extra deck is kind of up to you. I do have a copy of number 11 Big Eye, which is another one that you could keep. Crusadia Aeromax, Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend, Savage Dragon, Boral End, and Boral Sword. Usually when I'm using Pot of Prosperity, the 3 Boral monsters are the first to go. And then it's Tyrant. It's been the Tired Tapir and a copy of Flare Metal next, as my dogs start to bark. And then it's whatever I need left. I don't use Blackluster Soldier generally for it, so it comes down to these 5. And usually I want to try to keep Zeus in the extra deck if I can. So it comes down to Avermax is usually one that goes. Big Eye tends to go. And then it just comes down to what do I need. I have used a copy of Rock of the Vanquisher with Pot of Prosperity, but I don't like doing that because it does affect what you can do board-wise. If you don't have one left in the extra deck, there is no Monster Reborn in this deck. So it's very difficult to get it back. But if you're in a good position, you don't need it. That is it for the extra deck. Yeah, let's dive into the side deck real quick. The side deck is very, very interesting. We have 2 copies of Ghost Bell, 2 copies of Droll, a single Called By, 1 Dark Ruler, which I'll probably bump up to 2, 2 copies of Epidemic Virus, then we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched, and 2 copies of D-Barrier. A lot of these are attributes that are useful in the deck. I know Droll is a wind, but he's just Droll is useful for stopping your opponent. It does come up in games. I did set that in occasionally. So that is it for the Vanquish Soul deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like, leave a comment, and I will catch you guys later. See ya.